Hey guys, Tyson here from Thick Boy Fight Club. We're here for another Thick Boy breakdown. And today we're going to be talking about something a little more long form, and it's going to be the emergence of Zuffa Boxing. Last night, at least when I'm filming this, we just saw Ryan Rizicki fight Chris Billum Smith in an amazing fight and an amazing war. And one thing I've noticed since the fight has been over is how much credit and attention people have been giving Ryan Rizicki for his performance. Even though he lost the fight, even though he got stopped, first time in his career, this seems to be more of a narrative about how he fought, the heart he showed, and his willingness to continue, and the fact that his corner had to stop the fight. Dana White kept talking about it, right? There seemed to be way more attention on the guy who lost than the guy who won. And I want to right away, even though I'm biased, I'm probably going to get a lot of shit for this. I'm going to give a lot more credit to Dana White and Zuffa Boxing than I am just the two fighters. For the longest time, one of the biggest criticisms I've had and many people have had in the sport of boxing is that we do not see the best fighters fight the best. And Zuffa Boxing came in right away and said, hey, we're going to take over. We're going to make this more of a structure like what we see with the UFC, and we're going to make the best fight the best. And as we know, for the last couple of years, there's been a lot of wars behind this, especially on the boxing side. Changing of the Ali Act, Eddie Hearn versus Dana White, Oscar De La Hoya versus Dana White, and people criticizing this. But right away, we are seeing that Zuffa Boxing is living up to the word, which is basically saying, who cares if you lose a fight if you are a good fighter and you come to fight? That's something that we used to have in boxing. I think about, the old school days, and even though I wasn't alive for it, the reason these fights live forever, when Duran, Hagler, Hearn, Sugar Ray Leonard, they all fought each other, they all lost to each other, and nobody cared. Whereas in today's boxing, unless you are a superstar, a former champion, or, I'm just going to go out and say it, a Mexican fighter who has a huge fan base, losing a lot of times seems to be a death sentence in the sport. We spend years and years waiting for these big fights to happen, all because guys are protecting their O and the politics in boxing. And then when the fights finally happen, the guy who wins doesn't get his credit. One of the best examples of this is probably Terence Crawford versus Earl Spence, a fight that everybody knows probably should have happened earlier. When it finally happened, before the fight, there wasn't this 100%, oh, no doubt Terence Crawford's going to win the fight narrative. But once he gave Spence the beats, all we heard was these excuses. Well, the fight should happen earlier. Spence had the car accident, which these things are all true. But it is not Terence Crawford's fault that this got delayed. I blame the politics in boxing. I believe there was a lot of things, and I don't blame Spence, but I do believe there's a lot of people who simply did not want to see that fight happen on his side because I think they knew what was going to happen. We can get into, this whole Canelo versus David Benavidez thing. Reality is, you will never see a fighter be a champion and avoid his number one contender for 3 to 5 years, and the fight just simply never happened. And all these excuses we keep hearing about why the fight never happened and all this, I just think is nonsense. The reality is he fought guys like John Ryder, Avi Ederman. There are no Avi Edermans in the UFC world.
Who the is that guy? Who the is that?
You do not get to fight guys coming off of losses as the UFC champion. And, one of the worst things I hate about the narrative in boxing, and it kills me because they don't realize how much they're killing their own sport, is this idea that this is Floyd Mayweather's fault. I've heard this argument multiple times that, oh, well, Floyd made it where losing was a problem and, it's his fault. And I just asked myself, what could Floyd have done differently? Could he have lost? Would it have been better for Floyd Mayweather to lose to make everybody else feel better? We know that doesn't make sense. We know it's nonsense. I've heard people criticize him when he fought Conor McGregor. The biggest problem with that argument when you compare what Canelo did with Benavidez and Mayweather fighting, Conor, was Floyd was not a champion. He was not an undisputed champion holding up a weight class, and he was, I think, almost 40. Canelo Alvarez, I believe, is just now turning 36. Floyd Mayweather fought Canelo at 36 years old when Canelo was 23. And the biggest irony of this argument is, if you look at Floyd Mayweather's career at the time, how much money he was making, the weight class he was actually fighting in, there would have never been a Floyd Mayweather versus Canelo if Floyd had the mentality that Canelo has. Not Conor. Canelo was never Floyd's number one contender. This was a fight that happened because it was the biggest fight in the sport. Everybody wanted to see it. Canelo was on a tear, whooping everybody. Mayweather's the guy we all wanted to see lose, and that's the only reason the fight happened. But if Mayweather had the mentality that Canelo does, which I've heard him even one time make the excuse that, oh, I'm not going to fight Benavidez because he comes into the fight too big and all this nonsense. But like, you're the undisputed champ of that weight class. If the guy makes the weight, you have to fight him. And I've personally never been one of these people that believes the weight bully argument. Unless you're on some type of illegal supplement, cutting too much weight is not an advantage. Personal opinion. And this is coming from a guy who used to cut 25 to 30 pounds when I was competing. If you don't do it properly or you cut too much weight, it is a disadvantage. And I specifically believe it's a disadvantage in a sport like boxing where, 36 minutes is the limit you're going to go in a 12-round fight. It's more anaerobic. Wrestling is not an aspect of the sport. I definitely think being a weight bully is more of an advantage in MMA, and yet we've never heard of a UFC champion not fighting somebody because they thought they were too big for the weight class. And so I always found that odd that we blame Floyd Mayweather for simply going undefeated, right? Like, what was he supposed to do? Get beat up for you guys? And one of the worst arguments I've ever heard in terms of this fight, can you find me a fight in the history of the sport where being 36 years old was considered an advantage against a 23-year-old? The Floyd Mayweather-Canelo fight is the only fight in combat sports history, and I'm going from wrestling, jiu-jitsu, MMA, boxing, Muay Thai, where the 36-year-old fighting the 23-year-old has been deemed as the advantage. I've heard people try to say that, oh, well, Mayweather caught him early and it was a strategic thing. I'm sorry, like, when was he supposed to fight him? When he was 39? Most fighters at 36 have already taken a loss. I can honestly say, I mean, and I'm sure there's some people that are going to know better than me, only fighters I can think of that were on that high-level, undisputed pound-for-pound ranking that were undefeated at 36, I think was him and Crawford. Even the Pacquiao fight. People forget that Floyd Mayweather was older than Pacquiao, and yet we criticize him for when he fought Pacquiao. So I challenge anybody who sees this, I don't care if you see it as a clip on Instagram, YouTube, find me another fight in combat sports history where being a 36-year-old was ever seemed to be an advantage. It wasn't an advantage when Chavez fought De La Hoya. It's obviously a lot of times the reverse, right? We've had times where a legend loses in, let's say, 35 and up, and we say it's because he was old, right? Another example is even this Canelo fight, right? Canelo fought Crawford. Crawford was older than him, jumping, I think, 3 weight classes, if you're being honest, from when he got the 47 belt and jumped up to 68. And yet we're talking about Canelo like he's an old man. Yet Canelo is the same age as when Mayweather fought him. I just can't think of another time in the history of any combat sport where being a 36-year-old was an advantage. And so back to my initial point about what Zuffa Boxing is doing, I love the fact that Ryan Rizicki went out there, put it all on the line, fought, died on his shield. His own corner had to pull him away. He didn't even get knocked out, and yet he's getting credit for it. Whereas, like in the past, a lot of these fights that we see, the big reason so many people avoid fighting tough fights is because of the narrative. A perfect example is Errol Spence. Errol Spence finally stepped up and fought Crawford. A lot of people who hate on Crawford and what I call the politics have given him all the excuses. Oh, he was older, even though he's not older than Crawford. Oh, he had the car accident, which is true. Look at how people have just discarded Errol Spence. He took that one loss, and look at how differently people view Errol Spence. He hasn't fought since, and that is probably, to me, an example of why we see this in boxing. Another perfect example is Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder, for years and years and years, was trying to get this Anthony Joshua fight. He got his chance against Fury. I believe he actually beat him the first time. Then they fought again. I won't get into the politics. Maybe I'll do it in another video about maybe the questionable things that might have happened, about the rumors about Fury maybe cheating in his gloves. I won't get into that right now. But, look at how people have treated Deontay Wilder since taking his recent losses. And yet, Francis Ngannou, an MMA fighter, was able to get an Anthony Joshua and a Tyson Fury fight back-to-back. If there's any doubt who the best promoter in combat sports is, it's undoubtedly Dana White. How many other fighters in the sport can take multiple losses? We've seen Francis Ngannou lose more than once and was able to come into boxing and get 2 fights back-to-back that an Olympian in Deontay Wilder was never able to get. I mean, really let that sink in. Even the Conor McGregor thing. The fact that Conor McGregor was able to even get a fight against Floyd Mayweather with losses on his record is proof of what kind of promoter Dana White is. And so a lot of people, and I've had a lot of arguments about this, and I believe every month as every event happens, these arguments are getting weaker and weaker. Dana White is the best promoter in combat sports, and he might be the best promoter in history. Two fighters I always bring up, for a lot of my boxing fans that want to see good fights and want fighters to be able to just have that freedom to be great, go look at two guys, Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal. Two guys who've never won a world title, have double-digit losses on their records, and they are millionaires. Once again, I'm not going to say I know everything about the sport of boxing, but I do challenge some of my boxing friends and the people I debate about this. Can you name any boxers who never won world titles, have double-digit losses, 10 or more, and became millionaires and fought for $1 million contracts? It is almost unheard of in the sport of boxing to have 10 losses and still fight for $1 million. I don't know if it's ever happened. Other than being a superstar, a world champion, some type of wave in the past, you will never see a boxer at the level of what Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal were able to do with double-digit losses, because UFC fans do not care. Justin Gaethje is about to fight Ilia Topuria on the White House lawn for the world title, and he's had multiple losses. We've seen him get knocked out. I believe he lost his first 2 or 3 fights in the UFC right away, and yet at 37, he might even be 38 by the time the fight happens, he's fighting for a world title. That just does not happen in boxing anymore. And so if you look at what Zuffa Boxing has done, I think this Ryan Rizicki fight is a perfect example of how we're finally seeing that, like, we have an organization or promotion that is showing you that if you take the tough fights, fans will not hold it against you. And I've always said it is not boxing fans' fault that Jake Paul and all these people have been able to come in and take over their sport. It is the promotions and it is the politics, the WBC. I mean, Canelo Alvarez was never stripped of his undisputed status after ducking Benavidez for like 4 or 5 years, yet they immediately stripped Crawford after he beat Canelo, which I don't understand how anybody does not see how crazy that is. They stripped Shakur right away, all because of his beef with the WBC, yet you guys let Canelo hold on to those belts for years and years and years and never forced him to go and fight Benavidez. And then people making arguments about, oh, well, it's about jumping weight class. Okay, well, when he went and fought Bivol for 175, why was he not stripped of his undisputed status at 168? Then Bivol beats him and says, I'll come down to 168 to fight you, and he's able to turn it down. So you got to explain to me how the sport of boxing allowed Canelo to duck both Bivol and Benavidez at 168 and keep his status. And then he goes off and fights a 38-year-old coming from 147 for the undisputed status, and then loses. I've always said, I think Bivol was a cherry pick gone wrong. He claims he thinks he won the fight, yet never wanted a rematch. And I don't think that's what happened with Crawford. I just think he genuinely believed youth and size was his advantage, and I believe that as well. But, you know, I'm a big Canelo fan. I know a lot of times a lot of people are going to get at me for saying, no, you're a Canelo hater. I more hate on his fans and the politics around Canelo. I do not hate Canelo. He's a great fighter. There's lots of stuff that I study about him. I think he definitely evolved since his Floyd Mayweather fight. But if you look at the politics behind the sport, and so, you know, and now even I'm going to probably be double speaking when I say this, I don't blame Floyd Mayweather for the state of boxing. I blame Canelo. If you look at how, you know, we hand over the status of the king of boxing, whatever that means, the face. When Floyd Mayweather left, he had his issues with HBO. He went to Showtime. He broke all kinds of records. You cannot tell me that he's the death of boxing. But look at what happened to HBO Boxing when they went all in with Canelo and Triple G. Two guys who, I'm sorry, I believe they were ducking some of their most difficult fights. I've always said that. I believe that. Look what happened to HBO Boxing. It collapsed. Now, you can argue, oh, well, business, you know, HBO is a network. Fine. They then went over to Showtime. Showtime's broken the biggest fight records in history. Showtime Boxing no longer exists. PBC was at Fox. That contract is over. Top Rank in ESPN. That contract is over. One of them, I believe it was PBC, was also on Amazon. That contract is over. The only network that has been able to maintain this is DAZN. And it seems like if you look at some of these weird lawsuits that are happening, you know, Virgil Ortiz suing De La Hoya because I think he's ducking boots. I think he's trying to follow the Canelo way. You know, I think they've been losing a lot of money, and now you're seeing that DAZN is no longer willing to let people just fight whoever they want. And you know, I still give credit to the Benavidez's of the world. Obviously, Beterbiev, you know, he's 40 damn near, saying he wants all the smoke. I believe that Zuffa Boxing is only allowed to exist because of the state that boxing allowed it to be. There's a reason that all these other promotions of MMA are never able to fully take over the UFC because there's no ducking. The UFC does not care what your status is once you are a champion. If you do not want to fight the top guy, you are stripped. We've seen guys come back from knee surgeries, and if you are the champ, you are expected to fight the best guy who is the champ. We saw it happen to Cain Velasquez. We've seen this happen with tons of guys who come from off of injuries, and if you keep your status as champion, they do not care, and they do not give you tune-up fights. And you know, I know a lot of boxing fans are gonna say, "Oh, well, you know, it's gonna be a monopoly and all this." Yeah, but there's so many commissions already. How can Zuffa become a monopoly unless the fans and what we see in the sport is allowing it? And what I'm hearing is that potentially they're going to be signing Devin Haney and Shakur and potentially making that fight happen, which I think that would literally be the end of all these promotions. If Zuffa Boxing and Dana White find a way to sign Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson and they fight, I believe that's the end of all argument.
So what was told to me is that Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson have ironclad signed with Zuffa. That announcement is imminent, could be as early as next week. This is what I was told. And I was also told that Zuffa, the fight they want upon signing both of them, is them fighting each other. And I believe Mike Coppinger reported as much about a month ago. Well, the same was told to me.
What I can say that it's a fight on the table for Devin and Shakur with that group right now.